So in this article that I'm quoting, and then with blue rebutting, here's the article. Robin Lake Fox, the unauthorized version, Truth and Fiction in the Bible. He's starting to nitpick at the facts without being accurate. Let's go to this point where I left off. The author says when he refers to Herod Antipas at 3:1 in the Bible, he correctly calls him tetrarch, as Luke says this, but not king. Herod Archelaus ruled Judea about until AD 6, but only as an ethnarch, like Matthew 2:22. Luke might have misdescribed him as king, but like Matthew, he would have called him Archelaus or Herod Archelaus. My comment is you have confused something here. Both Luke 1:5 and 2:2 both refer to King Herod the Great. 3:1 refers to Antipas. No problem so far, just he wants to throw in some innuendos. At 1:5, the Herod must be the great King Herod, just as Matthew's Gospel describes. In Matthew, the Nativity coincides with the great Herod, Massacrer of the innocents, whose death is a reason for the return from the flight into Egypt. He's got that correct. Now he goes on to say, Luke's Gospel therefore assumes that King Herod and Governor Quirinius were contemporaries, but they were separated by over 10 years or more. The incoherent dating is only the start of the problem. Well, I've already explained that above. Also, it is worth noting that we have a manuscript evidence that describes a soldier who was legate of Syria twice during this time frame. There are two main interpretations of this manuscript evidence. One is that it refers to Q. Varus placing Quirinius as a procurator during the birth of Christ, and the other that it refers to Quirinius himself. The first option is defended by Ernest Martin in this article here, the Christian think tank. A Latin inscription found in 1764 about 1/2 mile south of the ancient villa of Quintilius Varus at Tivoli, 20 miles east of Rome, states that the subject of the inscription had twice been governor of Syria. There you go. This can only refer to Quintilius Varus, who was Syrian governor at 2 different times. Numismatic evidence shows he ruled Syria from 6 to 4 BC, and other historical evidence indicates that Varus was again governor from 2 BC to AD 1. Between his two governorships was Saturnius, whose tenure lasted about from 4 to 2 BC. Significantly, Tertullian, 3rd century, said the imperial records show that censuses were conducted in Judea during the time of Sentius Saturninus. Tertullian also placed the birth of Jesus in 3 or 2 BC. This is precisely when Saturninus would have been governor, according to my new interpretation. That the Gospel of Luke says Quirinius was governor of Syria when the census was taken, is resolved by Justin Martyr's statement in the 2nd century that Quirinius was only a procurator, not governor of the province. In other words, he was simply an assistant to Saturninus, who was the actual governor, as Tertullian stated. Okay, problem resolved. Don't draw conclusions. The inscription is questioned. This goes on. The inscription in question is a fragment of a funeral stone discovered in Tivoli near Rome in 1764 and is now displayed in the Vatican Museum. We know only that it was set up after the death of Augustus in 14 AD, since it refers to him as divine. The actual content of the inscription is as follows, and here's in the Latin. And here's it's quoted. King brought into the power of Augustus and the Roman people and Senate, for this honored with 2 victory celebrations, for the same thing the triumphal decoration, obtained the proconsulate of the province of Asia, again of the deified Augustus, Syria, and Phoenicia. So the second option is favored by William Ramsay. The possibility that Quirinius may have been governor of Syria on an earlier occasion has found confirmation in the eyes of a number of scholars from the testimony of Lapis Tibertinus. This inscription recording the career of a distinguished Roman officer is unfortunately mutilated, so that the officer's name is missing, but from the details that survive, he could very well be Quirinius, and it contains a statement that when he became imperial legate of Syria, he entered upon the office for the second time. The question is, did he become imperial legate of Syria for the second time, or did he simply receive an imperial legateship for the second time, having governed another province in that capacity on the early occasion? The wording is ambiguous. Ramsay held that he was appointed an additional legate of Syria between 10 and 7 BC for the purpose of conducting the Homodancian War. While the civil administration of the province was in the hands of other governors, including Sentius Saturninus, under whom, according to Tertullian, the census of Luke 2:1 to the end was held. Under either of these scenarios, someone served twice, and under either of these scenarios, Quirinius could easily have been responsible for the census. So we don't have a questionable point in Scripture here. And curiously enough, even if that were not the case, somehow the linguistic data of the last few decades indicates that Luke 2:1 should be translated before the census of Quirinius instead of the customary first census of Quirinius. This would solve the problem without even requiring two terms of office for Q. And while we are talking about Greek here, the term Luke uses for Quirinius' governorship is the very general term hegemon, which in extra-biblical Greek was applied to prefects, provincial governors, and even Caesar himself. In the New Testament, it is similarly used as a wide term, applying to procurators, Pilate, Festus, Felix, and to general rulers. This gives us a range of meaning: leader, commander, chief, and so on. This term would have applied to Quirinius at many times in his political career as a general term. Syria would have had several individuals that could be properly so addressed at the same time. Remember, Justin Martyr called him procurator in Apology 134, which is also covered by this term. My point is, nothing is really out of order here. But this skeptic goes on. Luke's nativity story hinges on its decrees from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. Caesar Augustus was the Roman Empire, but if the nativity took place in the reign of the king Herod the Great, the Jews were still Herod's subjects, members of a client kingdom, not a province under direct Roman rule. Okay, rebuttal on this. You are somewhat mistaken here. It is true that Judea did not technically become a Roman province until 6 AD, but the facts prior to that indicate much tighter authority and control than your statement might lead one to believe. Rome did a military conquest before Herod the Great was even born. Pompey attacked Jerusalem and even invaded the temple and was made a tributary to Rome until Caesar defeated Pompey in Egypt around 48 BC. Herod the Great's dad had aided Caesar in that endeavor and so won the favor of Julius Caesar, and with a procuratorship of, plus Roman citizenship and exemption from taxes. Then in 47 BC, the daddy Herod appointed the son Herod to be governor of Galilee, still completely under Roman rule. He still had to be appointed tetrarch by Antony, still a thrall. He was also proclaimed king by the Roman leaders, Octavius and Antony, in 40 BC, but he had to reconquer the land from the Parthians, which he did in 37 BC. As a client kingdom, they were still under the authority of Rome. All of the rulers, for example, were appointed, including all the Herods, and ratified by Rome. Actually, when I keep reading your paragraph, it sounds like you are calling Luke mistaken in referring to Rome as driving the issue of the census. He is indeed making that point, but he is correct in that the client kings were still subject to Roman enrollment decrees. The skeptic goes on, the status of client kings in the Roman Empire left them responsibility for their subjects' taxation. Not decision-making authority, they couldn't say no, but local execution in the Roman process, yes. The skeptic goes on, relations between Emperor Augustus and King Herod had often been stormy and had even led to threats of Roman interference, which Herod and his envoys had to avert. However, their conflicts never caused the removal of Herod's royal status, although this was the only way in which his kingdom could have been taxed on the Roman model in accordance with orders from the Roman Empire. It is not just that Herod the Great never coincided with Quirinius, the governor, he never coincided with the Roman taxing of it. Well, in blue, rebuttal. The relationship between Augustus and King Herod had its ups and downs, indeed. But the argument that his Roman granted title of king meant that his nation was exempt from taxes, tribute, census is just flat wrong. As I hinted at up before, it had become a paying tributary since its conquest by Pompey, long before King Herod gets his title. Augustus never issued a decree to tax the whole world. Robin Lane Fox says the unauthorized version. It is even doubtful if the Emperor Augustus ever increased a decree to Rome's provinces that all the world should be taxed. Certainly Romans did take census in individual provinces, which were ruled directly by their governors. They were not, however, coordinated by an order from Augustus to all the world, at least so far as our evidence goes. Well, here, there's an argument from silence below, the points from the historian's fallacies. At that evidence extends through histories, local inscriptions, and the papyrus returns of taxpayers in Egypt, it is immensely unlikely that a new edict of such consequence has escaped our knowledge. I'm saying, who are you trying to kid? You and I are looking at the same sources, no doubt, and there are huge gaps in the records. Immensely unlikely. In AD 6, the skeptic says, we do know that Augustus was enacting a tax on inheritance to help pay for his armies. The blue says, by the way, the taxation to support his army is the main reason it is believed that Quirinius assisted in the taxing of 8 to 5 BC. His extended military maneuvers in the Pisidian highlands dating from around 12 BC would have required additional financing. However, the skeptic goes on to say the tax affected only Roman citizens, not Jews of Nazareth, and there was no need for a worldwide census to register their names. Blue, rebuttal. Remember, the census in AD 6 is not the one of Luke 2:2 of 8 to 6 BC, but the census of AD 6 did hit the Jews pretty heavily, at least 600 talents as a nation. Josephus in Antiquities, cited in Jeremiah's Jerusalem in the times of Jesus, and as a national tax, it did affect the Jewish folk. Loads like this are always distributed to the people, in addition to the already oppressive tax structure of the Herods. And Luke does not place the worldwide census at the time of the AD 6 tax, but rather puts it sometime before the Syrian-based 1 in 7 to 5 BC. But more accurately, Luke was probably not referring to a taxation census at all, simply a registration. Registrations were normally associated with taxation above, or military service, Jews were exempt, and special government ballots. We have conclusive evidence that an empire-wide decree, not necessarily execution, of course, registration occurred in the time frame described by Luke. Martin summarizes the literary, archaeological, and iconographic evidence for this. A sixth reason for placing the nativity of Jesus in 3 or 2 BC is the coincidence of this date with the New Testament account that Jesus was born at the time when a Roman census was being conducted. There went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the Roman Empire, all the Roman world should be registered. Historians have not been able to find any empire-wide census or registration in the years 7 to 5 BC, but there is, in red writing, a reference to such a registration of all the Roman people not long before 5 February 2 BC, written by Caesar Augustus himself. Quote, while I was administering my 13th consulship, 2 BC, the Senate and the equestrian order and the entire Roman people gave me the title Father of my Country. This award was given to Augustus on February 5, 2 BC. Therefore, the registration of citizen approval must have taken place in 3 BC. Orosius in the 5th century also said that Roman records of his time revealed that a census was indeed held when Augustus was made the first of men, an apt description of his award, Father of his country, of the country, at a time when all the great nations gave an oath of obedience to Augustus. Orosius dated the census to 3 BC, and besides that, Josephus substantiates that an oath of obedience to Augustus was required in Judea not long before the death of Herod. This agrees nicely in a chronological sense with what Luke records. Luke had it right. But more than that, an inscription found in Paphlagonia, eastern Turkey, also dated to 3 BC, mentions an oath sworn by the people in the land at the altars of Augustus and the temples of Augustus in the various districts. And dovetailing